Alright everyone, today we're actually going to try to figure out what to do about the dusty Brembo residue without having to swap out the brake pads. I know a bunch of people have already gone power stop brake pads instead of the dusty Brembos just to reduce the dust. That's certainly one way to do it. I decided, you know what, let's see if the stuff that I used in the past to try to prevent brake dust buildup is going to work. So we're gonna go with these guys. I'm not getting paid by them in any shape or form. I've tried others. This one seems to work the best for me. If you have others that work better than this, please feel free to suggest. Like I said, have zero endorsement from Armorall, but this Outlast brake dust repellent has really seemed to have done the trick. So in the past anyway, with other cars. So what we're gonna do is we're going to give the wheels a nice rinse, dry them off a bit, spray it down, and then try to report based on mileage and the type of driving what we are seeing as far as effectiveness. And to really be fair, also call out any weather conditions, how this stuff is holding up in the rain or just the dust of any kind of weird driving environments and so on. Quick disclaimer in case it matters. So this is an RT package, but it comes with an SRT brake setup with big brakes up front and slotted front rotors. And then in the back, it's also SRT kit, but it's a standard rotor, non-slotted. So again, if it matters for the purposes of this experiment to see what we're going to be able to get out of that brake dust repellent. So I'm not going to show rinsing it off, but needless to say, I definitely recommend making sure that you're using some kind of brush, something that is not bristled. That's definitely not with these factory wheels. It's this nice satin finish, don't want to jack it up. So some kind of soft special brush for wheel clean. We're going to rinse it off, and then we're going to go from there. Many of you certainly already know this, but here's an example. This is just from brushing off the back wheel. And the backs are usually the least dusty compared to the fronts, but this is just going through after a car wash was done within the last few days. This is the residue from just the rear wheel. So I totally am just as frustrated with the brake dust as many other owners are. Like I said, if worst case comes, I am going to swap out the pads, but I really just want to give this other product a shot first, see what happens.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Okay, so we have done our rinse. Now we're just waiting for the stuff to dry. It was sitting out on the blacktop. It's 87 degrees outside. Blacktop probably even hotter. Aside from just water spots, one of the things that these guys stress is to not apply in direct sunlight and to not have it just be too hot of a solution. So in the basement here, we think we're gonna, in the garage, we're gonna try to maintain decent temperature. We're gonna let these things dry off first, then we're gonna apply. So you guys can read about all this. I mean, it says it's sold on Amazon. It's sold in a bunch of different places, as far as I know, even like your AutoZone and other places that you can get. A bunch of disclaimers, repels this, that, and the other. Keep out the reach of children, no kidding. Make sure wheels are clean and dry. Shake can well, allow to dry 1 hour. Dry time will vary. And definitely do it above 65 degrees. And then somewhere in here, and I forget where, or maybe I just read on other forums, they say that you really want to give it about 24 hours to cure. But before we get into the application part, we're just going to let the wheels dry off and see what happens. As a quick aside, if this is anything like what my Jeep Grand Cherokee used to be, you will need probably, you're going to be fine with 1 can per application. You may even be able to do 2 to 3, but depending how OCD you are, if you decide to buy this stuff, I definitely recommend getting a few outright. Besides, I think there's sales or deals out there to get a discount per can if you buy in bulk.
1 hour later!
All right, we got our dry time done. We took the rag over to the wheels just to clean them up. Now we're gonna shake up our repellent solution as much as possible. And then what we're going to start doing is almost like applying paint to a degree, but you don't want to overdo. You don't want to have heavy drip spots everywhere. So we're gonna do this. Then to get inside, we're going to get inside the spokes, kind of vertically brushing kind of motion almost. Pretty sure this is safe for clear coat, but you just want to be sure not to go too much onto your paint. So the wheel's going to give us this nice and wet look, and we're going to do this again on the next wheel. And then obviously, in the interest of saving time, we're not going to spend time on this video going through all 4 wheels. Same idea, nothing new there. It is not unsafe for brakes, so applying this and having it overspray onto the rotor is not going to create any sort of performance or brake issues, so do not be concerned with that. Okay, so the next step after the other 2 wheels will be to let it sit and dry for a bit.
2 hours later.
So now that we got the spray to dry out, depending on kind of how you did it, if you overdid it, you would normally see collection, kind of aggregation of the wet runoff at the bottom of the tire, and then after you let it dry even longer, there sometimes could be a white mark. Or you'll start seeing things like this, where you have these like almost like overspray dry out spots, and you know, it could vary, of course, based on application. I have it in a few places. And then let's have a look at a front here. Kind of similar scenario. And then there's the white residue right there from the runoff getting dried out. And then these things, these marks. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a regular microfiber cloth. We're just going to buff this stuff out. It's not going to actually remove it. We're not going to put any kind of elbow grease on that, but we're just going to buff out these marks just to make sure, not that they're supposed to stain, but just to give it that cleaner look all around. And then after that, we're going to let this thing sit for another 24 hours or a little bit less before driving the car around.
24 hours later.
So we got, fire this thing up. We have 2,695 miles on the car. We're going to, today anyway, plan to do some suburban driving. I'm going to turn down some of that volume. And as far as I know, we're not planning on really doing much of anything else. But you never know. The suburban driving we're expecting is probably going to not exceed about 20 to 30 miles. Weather outside is predicted to be 96 degrees today, all sun and humidity. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so after day 1, we only did, I think we ended up doing like less than 10 miles, but still. So just kind of checking brake dust. Granted, we didn't do that much. Still have some residue here from the overspray. And you're starting to see some of it anyway. Could it be worse? Yeah, I guess. I mean, we didn't really, should have done a more controlled experiment to see what the accumulation would look like after before we applied the spray. But 10 miles, we're still seeing some dusting here. Kind of hard to say how well this is going to hold up. So we'll go to the next day and see what happens.
The following day.
All right, so we got 25 miles. We got a mixed bag of weather. We have 88 degrees and a chance of some thunderstorms throughout. So I guess this time we'll go off again and see if driving through the rain, if we have brake dust being washed off by the rain easier than if we had not applied the repellent, or what's going to happen. Okay, we got day 2. We did end up driving through some rainstorm. See the rain marks over there. As far as the repellent, the brake dust repellent, appearance-wise, at least from a distance anyway, it looks like the wheels are clean. Now again, sometimes you could say, well, driving through the rain, of course they're going to be clean, but I tell you, the kind of Brembo brake dust that gets cranked out of these, that latches on even through the rain. So the wheels still have their sheen, it seems like. There's not clear residue unless you really come up close, and of course, you know, there you start seeing that there is a bit, but I would still say it's better than having not applied it. But then again, we're also not driving many miles per day either, so let's just see what keeps happening.
The next day.
Alright, we got 2750 miles here, and then the weather is supposed to be, you know, you got some wet roads left over from the downpour, but it's supposed to be otherwise dry. So we'll see how the brake buildup continues. At this point, I'm not sure I have much faith in the Repellent. Alright, so next day, after driving through just epic rainfall, still from a distance, you have the sheen. It's not as apparent yet that there's brake dust, but up close, definitely starting to see, if you really look close enough, brake dust trails starting to accumulate on the bottom part, around the spokes, and in the middle, well, maybe around the bolts, yeah, definitely. In the middle, though, not too terrible. I mean, yeah, you of course have those marks there, but still not sure that that spray job did quite what it was supposed to do, considering we haven't really done that many miles. And again, maybe it is the torrential downpour that we've been driving through, maybe just kind of washed it off, even though it's supposed to be resistant to that. On the backs, you're definitely starting to see buildup of brake dust. Again, from a distance, it's still not bad. The sheen is kind of there, but the closer you get, the more brake buildup you have. So this was 3 days after application of the brake repellent, and this is going into day 4.
One eternity later.
All right, we got our last day, just about a full week of running the same spray repellent from Armorall on Brembo based setup. Wheels, the sheen is there. Looks like you have spots, depending on how the application went, of certainly brake dust, but you can kind of see where the applicator was and maybe where it didn't penetrate quite as well. Overall, I think that really this is an okay spray, at least for visibility. You're still going to get brake dust buildup, but you see pockets where it held better than others. So a few disclaimers I think that are worthwhile here. One is that the solution that we applied is about 2 years old. I don't know if these things age or somehow get worse as you hold them for too long, if it really needs to be a new can or not. And again, as you guys saw, we ended up driving through a monsoon at decent speeds, so it's possible that it just got washed off or impacted somehow. Again, the sheen is there. After a week, the brake dust is also there, so it's kind of a combination. So I suppose it could have been worse without it, but there's just, I don't believe that this experiment gave us enough information to really say whether this is a worthwhile investment to get this repellent or not. So we're going to rule this inconclusive, and in the very least, certainly not enough here to say that this is the best brake repellent you should immediately run out and get. Just kind of use at your own discretion, I guess, and see what you think. Again, feel free to comment on what other ones may be out there. Maybe we ought to give those a try as well, and we'll go from there. Again, thanks very much for watching.